While John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween ignited a slasher boom, especially one that was set in a holiday, when people were letting their guards down, I think 1972 Silent Night Bloody Night from director Theodore Gershony might be the granddaddy of them all. The cold weather of a Halloween or Christmas might be the perfect setting to escalate the chill factor. Valentine's Day was also a popular setting for a killer on rampage to slay those lovebirds who were swindled into the holiday created by business enterprises. The most notable one, of course, would be My Bloody Valentine from 1981 from director George Mihalka, which told an interesting story of a cannibalistic miner killing a group of young people partying on Valentine's Day, which of course Canadian filmmaker Patrick Lussier remade in 2009 with My Bloody Valentine 3D, which was a box office success. A year later in 1982, Boaz Davison made Hospital Massacre or X-Ray, which talked about an unrequited confession on a Valentine's Day years ago, came back to haunt the girl that rejected our killer. The plot seemingly was hollow and nonsensical, but still gathered a cult following. In 1999, there is a direct-to-DVD feature called Lover's Lane, which was one of Anna Faris's earliest movies. Meanwhile, Aussie director Jamie Blanks made Valentine in the year 2000, starring the likes of Denise Richards, David Boreanaz, and Katherine Heigl. Both movies followed a bit of a similar plot of a person become mentally unsound after being rejected on Valentine's Day, driving the person to assume the role of a serial killer targeting victims on Valentine's Day. There's a new kid on the block with 2025's Hard Eyes, directed by Josh Ruben and written by Christopher Landon, Michael Kennedy, and Philip Murphy. In the prologue, we saw an obnoxious couple went through the whole pomp and circumstances to carry out a well-designed and orchestrated wedding proposal in the middle of a vineyard in Seattle. As the bride-to-be was mouthing the words her fiancé was meticulously delivering during the picture-perfect proposal, I thought it was part of a skit of a film production, and immediately shit hits the fan. A masked killer had been on a rampage from state to state during the build-up of St. Valentine's Day. Slaying loving couples was his or her modus operandi, suitably named as the Hard Eyes Killer or HEK from the news outlets. As the law enforcement had been on high alert, we switched our attention towards our protagonist Ellie, an advertising professional who was hit with a roadblock in her career and her love life. A chance encounter with a dreamy man at the eve of Valentine's Day, and by sheer serendipity, he is a big shot in the New York advertising world to work with Ellie that might be a jolt of life to her ailing career and perhaps a sliver of hope for her love life as well. Well, there was no real need for me to narrate what was to transpire from that point onwards, when you added HEK and the police hot on the heels of the serial killer into the mix. The movie was sold on the premise of melding the romantic comedy genre and the gory slasher horror genre, and I thought the filmmakers had met their objective. I was absolutely appalled at the exaggerated acting of the cast and the awful dialogues spewing from the horribly written characters, which might be endemic to the rom-com genre in Hollywood these days, but it helped to root for the killers to tear them into pieces. While I can relate to young people so wrapped up with their own lives and relationships to a state that you will not sense your lives in danger, the incompetence of the police force in this movie is inexcusable. The gory kills in the movie though were quite creative in some instances with new contraptions to mince the flesh of the victims since the heydays of the Saw franchise. The execution was not awful as well. I was not exactly sure if the creators of this movie felt they were earnestly making a movie that would cross genres, which some critics were praising. However, I strongly felt it was satirical towards the slasher genre. Of course, people will say the slasher genre tends to follow the same tropes and orchestration of jump scares. Yet from the design of the Hard Eyes Killer, it was hard to shake off the cross between Jason Voorhees and the killer from The Collector with the headgear. There was no explanation of the aesthetic choices of the mask, except for the Valentine's Day connection, and we did not know what the red vision was truly used for. Was it a tweaked night vision, or was it used for picking up infrared signatures? One thing for sure, the machete HEK was armed with is one cool piece of weaponry. The biggest influence to the plot of this movie had to be the Scream franchise, which I shall not divulge too much, but just say it became incredibly convoluted with the revelation of the HEK. Being trained by the Scream franchise, as an audience, we were second-guessing the likely suspects of the killer among the cast of characters to a state it became tiresome. Jordana Brewster is the most notable name in the cast, and her looks felt like a pattern way too closely to Courtney Cox's Gale Weathers, but she was the cop in this case. It could be profiling from my part, but putting the two actresses together, you can see an uncanny physical resemblance. It felt like a calculated casting choice. There was an inside joke about the Fast and Furious franchise, which of course Brewster was a big part of. Perhaps the most overt reference to the Scream movies, especially the newer ones from Radio Silence, was the inclusion of actor Mason Gooding as the Dreamboat from New York. He was the same guy who Jenna Ortega's character was infatuated with and was unkillable to a point that his invisibility might make John Wick blush. I did not like his character in the Scream movies, I did not like his character here, and I did not care that his father was Cuba Gooding Jr. Christopher Landon, who was part of the screenwriting team, was instrumental to the success of the Paranormal Activity franchise, written the screenplay for all of the sequels and a spin-off movie The Marked Ones. He would then focus into making horror comedies like Happy Death Day and its sequel, and Scout's Guide to Zombie Apocalypse, as well as Freaky. He will be dropping a trailer called Drop later in 2025. Yes, pun duly intended. It was evident there was a pedigree in accumulating tension and creating satisfying kill at the end of it. Perhaps Landon and Co should stay off writing mushy lines about young people in love. Director Josh Ruben had also dabbled into making horror comedies, the most recent being the live movie adaptation of Red Storm Entertainment's game Werewolves Within. There was a modern slickness in his filmmaking, and he had a knack of using amplified sound effects to unsettle the audience, which worked once but got irritating when it kept repeating. Hard Eye is a mindless slasher feature that if you can segregate the rom-com part and not care about it, while focusing on the visceral body violence, it was a decent ride. I'm awarding the movie a 5.5 out of 10. Just remember to not watch it with your date on your first Valentine's Day celebration. While this movie tried so hard to remind us about Scream, the next installment of that franchise is slated to release later this year, as well as the above mentioned dropped from Christopher Landon. So do subscribe to this channel for reviews of these movies. Please click the like button for this review if you can. Hope you have enjoyed my second Asian Trips featurette, talking about the Taiwanese supernatural horror Anti-Kalpa, the South Korean Spring Garden, and Tiger Stripes from director Amanda Niao Yu from Malaysia. Jokes on HEK, I don't even celebrate Valentine's Day.